The coming time will bring that very many enterprises of large and small style will be dissolved or be driven into bankruptcy by mismanagement and over-indebtedness. Unfortunately, this will also apply to the long-established firms and enterprises because their irresponsible ones will remove themselves from their leadership in order to arrive quickly at exorbitant wealth, which they will pay to themselves as compensations and settlements, and more, these compensation payments will be in the millions. Unhesitatingly and irresponsibly, the managers and directors of the firms, enterprises, and corporations will boundlessly get into debt and ruin these, whereby megalomania will be owned by these irresponsible ones just as much as extravagance, unpredictability, ignorance, and incompetence. All of this will become well known over time, but those in charge of legislative representation don't concern themselves with this because they themselves will be partly involved in the mismanagement issues. For this reason, the criminal leaders of the firms, enterprises, and corporations won't be prosecuted by the courts, at least in most cases. Also, white-collar crime will greatly increase, while the offense amounts will rapidly skyrocket into the millions and hundreds of millions and will even exceed the 1 billion mark, as this will also be the case with the mismanagement of the firms, enterprises, and corporations. Billy says, "You were talking about millions and billions of Swiss francs, I assume." Quetzal says, "That is correct." Billy says, "Can you tell me one or two names of the enterprises that, in the coming time, will fall under your predictions?" Quetzal says, "There will be very many that will suffer major damages of a financial form and that will go bankrupt, dismiss many workers, fall hopelessly into debt, or that will simply have to close the enterprise. But probably the most impressive, which will happen in the year 2001, will be the financial destruction of the Swissair, as well as several of its affiliated foreign airlines and several suppliers." Billy says, "You mean that the Swissair will actually collapse?" Quetzal says, "Yes, that will undoubtedly be the case in the year 2001. See report page 163. A future viewing has proven this." Billy says, "And what about the Sulzer Corporation?" Quetzal says, "It, too, will suffer and will dismiss many workers and sell large parts of the company. But these two upcoming events will only be a drop in the bucket, as you tend to say, because it all looks very bad for very many enterprises, firms, and corporations, which will also have reference to the Federal Fiscal House, because even in the upper house of Parliament, like already for a long time, there will be no authoritative power that will make the Fiscal House profitable and that will be able to lead it to reduction of its debts. Consequently, the Swiss government will continue to fall more heavily into debt." Billy says, "Nice outlooks, but as an individual, one cannot change anything in these precarious matters, not even if one would go to vote for certain things." Quetzal says, "That is correct because the members of the parties determine the ballots according to the proposals, pleas, and orders that are given to them, for they are manipulated by the party superiors and are robbed of their own free opinion. Thus, the parties also determine who will exercise a dictatorship over their members, what will be voted yes or no. So individual, more reasonable votes are of no use with ballots." Billy says, "I am also of the same opinion, which is why for as long as I've lived, I've never gone to a ballot box to cast my vote for or against something. But what all will still happen in the future, I mean specifically for Switzerland." Quetzal says, "A great deal will arise there, but I would still like to mention a prediction to you. It will be in the years after 1995, when Switzerland will be confronted with old events of World War II, which will then also carry into the third millennium. A security guard by the name of Christoph Mealy will find old data papers in a bank, which will be destined for the shredder and which will show account details of the Jewish people from the last World War. The security guard will steal these papers and hand them over to a Jewish organization in Zurich, which will then cause serious consequences for the banks and Switzerland, whereby billions of sums will be demanded, which are supposed to be paid to the surviving relatives or to those who are still living, who will still have a right to the accounts. This mealy will flee to America during the course of the negotiations, even though the Swiss courts will have nothing on him. The true reason for his escape will be money, which he will then hope to receive from organizations for his treason against Switzerland. The whole thing will be but the prelude to ensure that the Swiss government and banks, as well as various economic enterprises, will be attacked several times for financial reasons of lawyers, especially by a lawyer Fagan of American origin, who will be out for money and fame. Billy says, this, indeed, had to come. Those in power of Switzerland didn't exactly exhibit the cleanest waistcoats at the time of World War II. Just think of the fact that in 1945, for example, these lunatics wanted to test atom bombs in the Gotthard region, especially just the powerful military figures, or that the Swiss Red Cross operated espionage during World War II at the war fronts, or that people were sentenced to death and executed by the Swiss military, whereby even innocents were simply gunned down. Unfortunately, I was able to look on such an execution myself, for my godfather, Alfred F. L. Kaiser, secretly led me to the execution site, where we hid ourselves in the bushes and were able to observe everything. Quetzal says, that is well known to me. Billy says, good. In your remarks, you explained different things that you first mentioned recently. But how does it stand with the fact that in the coming time, something happens that will actually move the whole world? Will something actually occur as such, or will everything remain the same as everyday life, which the Earth people have already faced and have already been accustomed to for so long, whereby they are indifferent toward all events relating to this? Most people have become largely indifferent towards all misfortune, towards war, murder, torture, dictatorship, and crime, etc. So something special would already have to happen to pull them out of their lethargy. So the question is whether something will happen in the coming time, such that it arouses something in the people, even if it may only be for a short time or for a moment. Quetzal says, according to our predictions, that will actually be the case. The marriage between the British heir to the throne, Prince Charles, and Princess Diana will end in divorce in August of 1996. In this respect, at least about the fact that this marriage won't be good, Samira already reported to you at the beginning of the 80s. But this won't be the actual world-moving event that you asked for, but I think that the aforesaid and what is yet to be said will contribute to the event, because after the divorce, Princess Diana will lead a rather eventful life, will newly fall in love, and will die with her lover by a heavy traffic accident. This will happen on the 31st of August in Paris, at 12:35 a.m. The vehicle, which will be driven by an ordered driver, with Diana and her lover, Ahmed Al-Fayed, who is called Dodi, will come to a road tunnel at the River Seine at very high speed and will skid and crash into a concrete pillar. Al-Fayed and the driver, Henry Paul, will die immediately, while the then 36-year-old Princess Diana, who will be critically injured, will be admitted to the hospital and will die shortly before 4 o'clock in the morning. The bodyguard will be the only one in the car with his seatbelt buckled, which will lead to the fact that he, though badly injured, will survive. A combination of different factors will lead to the disaster, namely that on the one hand, the driver, Henry Paul, will be under the influence of drugs and alcohol and will drive the vehicle at around 200 kilometers per hour on the road and through the tunnel, and on the other hand, what will also play a role is that Diana, along with her lover, will try to escape in the armored Mercedes 280S from the obtrusive paparazzi, who will bother her and pursue her on their motorcycles. Another vehicle that will be in the tunnel will be another cause of the accident, because through a side sweep of the same by Diana's Mercedes, the actual catapult process will be triggered. Nevertheless, a clarification of this process won't take place, so the actual circumstances of the event won't be clarified by the police and specialists, because even the other vehicle of a white color won't be able to be found. This will be the event to which the entire world public will respond with dismay and sadness. On the 6th of September, the world will then take leave of Princess Diana, when a memorial service is held for her in England at London's Westminster Abbey. C News, a paper reports, Samira Block 4. pages 70 to 76.